Advancedrunk.
When folks think of remakes on the Game Boy Advance, most will point to your Mario Advances or your Final Fantasies or your Metroid Zero missions, all great games of course, but Double Dragon also got a Game Boy Advance makeover titled Double Dragon Advance, and it deserves its fair share of praise, not only because it's just a good game, but because of the reasons behind its development. Double Dragon Advance was made by a dev group called Million and published by Atlas in November 2003, and if you're not familiar with Million, it's because it's a small offshoot of Technos, with former Technos employee Muneki Ebenuma heading the project as lead designer. According to a Game Commander interview in 2010, Ebenuma wanted to make a Game Boy Advance version of Double Dragon as a way to properly preserve the legacy of the original arcade game, while still adding some improvements that the series picked up along the way, which included altering the fighting mechanics a bit to include moves from the NES Double Dragons and Super Double Dragon. Now that certainly sounds like a noble cause, but we've all seen such good intentions backfire before. George Lucas! But in the case of Double Dragon Advance, everything comes together as the ultimate, and some might say the best Double Dragon experience. You get 3 lives and 5 continues to get through 8 levels, with the 4 levels from the original Double Dragon, plus 4 new levels, and continues are handled arcade style, where you keep going right where you died, so really it's 15 lives to get through the whole game. You play as Billy or Jimmy Lee, and yes, this game is 2-player co-op with the Game Link cable, but it's also, single-player co-op? Yeah, you can play as both characters at the same time. Just press select to switch between the two. It is kind of a ridiculous way to play through this one, since one character will always be a sitting duck, but it's an interesting challenge that you don't see in too many other games. Since this is a Game Boy Advance game, the controls take a bit to get comfortable with. It's A to punch, B to kick, L to block, and R to jump, but that's in addition to a ton of other moves you can do, many of which you might recognize from Double Dragon 2 and Super Double Dragon. Simply holding a direction on the D-pad while pressing an attack button can have you throw an elbow or do a headbutt. You can double tap left or right on the D-pad to dash, which is always welcome in beat-em-ups like this, and pressing B while dashing will do a side kick, pressing A will do a huge uppercut, and B and A at the same time will do a roundhouse kick. You can also stagger enemies, which opens up another 7 different moves you can do, everything from a throw, a knee to the face, or a roundhouse kick. This game even has combos in juggling. You can launch enemies into the air with an uppercut and then hit them with a headbutt or a kick, which is especially satisfying when you're playing with a second player. You can also stomp enemies on the ground, you can parry enemy attacks to stagger them, there's tons of weapons you can use. Seriously, check out the manual here, there's 4 full pages of moves you can do. And like I said earlier, there's a lot of stuff taken from previous Double Dragon games. You can kick this guy in the face, knee him in the skull, and then toss him over your shoulder, and the controls while doing this are super smooth. When you charge at a guy with the weapon, you'll hit him a series of times, and it feels really satisfying. That's not to say this game is easy, not by a long shot. These guys in suits will counter what you throw at them, so you can't just button mash your way through this one. But hey, if all else fails, you can just pick up a friggin' boulder and toss it at people. The presentation here also stands out, since this one got a similar looking touch-up that Final Fight 1 received, featuring great looking pixel art and hilariously goofy dialogue. Plus, of course, there's a lot of beat-em-up stupidity here that always gets a laugh out of me, like this dude who just nopes himself right out of the fight by doing a jump kick straight into a bottomless pit. You gotta love that. So yeah, Double Dragon Advance has been on my list for months, and I hadn't heard all that much about it, so my expectations were pretty tepid. And I was not expecting this game to be this good at all. This might actually be the best Double Dragon game in the entire series. The sheer number of moves you can pull off make this one a lot of fun. In my first playthrough, I was still discovering new moves, even as I got toward the end of the game. It's a great beat-em-up that many modern beat-em-ups should be taking notes from. Definitely check out Double Dragon Advance any way you can. That's all for now. Thank you for watching, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.